And yeah, I last time on I guess it was Thursday, I mentioned that I'll probably go live again maybe on Sunday. And here it is, it's Sunday, and even though I'm not feeling like amazingly well today, um we're live and we're going to hang out for a bit and we're going to hopefully have some fun. Hey Dylan, many greetings. Many greetings indeed. Uh oh, I am in a lot of pain today, but we're gonna get through it. Hey Chewy, how's it going? Hooray for the Sunday stream. Yes, of course. So I do have good news to share with you guys. So there is that. I'm gonna wait just a little bit before I go into that, because I don't want to have to repeat it over and over again. But yeah. Yeah, I just, it's actually somewhat related to the computer situation because when it was all starting to happen and I had to open up the computer a few times and everything and go down there and see what's what. And when I was still in the figuring out situation, I threw my hip out. I was down on the floor and I was twisting all around and trying to see things, and my hip has been bothering me since then basically. And there are some days where it's not so bad, and there are some days where it's really bad, and today's one of those days. But just a little while ago, hey Alice, that's a weird, is that an emote? But is that an emote there? The loading circle, that's cute. But I just a little while ago, I took a shower and put on some of that, menthol stuff, and that really does help. The thing is, though, when you put it on your skin when it's damp, it really works really well, but you go through some suffering before it works. It's a reflection of your current mood. Oh, I understand that. Hey there, NIMBY. Hold on. I feel like I missed something here. Oh, you're asking about Dylan in the Dark. Okay, yeah. Yeah, there were these sort of like allusions to like the Netherlands, not the literal Netherlands, but like nether regions, a place that's like not connected to Middle Earth, but is just sort of. Well, let me see if I have a map that shows it actually. I'm gonna put you guys down for a moment. I have the atlas here. I don't know if I have. Let's see. Let's see. The third age. That's not what we want. We want the first age, really. Let's see. Valinor, Beleriand, and the lands in the north, Great March, flight of the Noldor realms before the Great. Yeah, I don't know that this shows any of those. Well, actually, yeah, you can kind of see it here. Let's pick you guys up. Hello. The Nether Realm for Mortal Kombat. There you go. Okay, so here we are. If you see there, that little landmass that kind of looks like Africa, that's Harad. And you can see that's the southern tip of Middle Earth. And the land below that is, that sort of metapod shape there. That is what people usually refer to as either the Nether realm or the or the hinterlands sometimes, and it was said to be completely uninhabited, and therefore we really don't know anything about it. And I don't know if that was something that Tolkien threw in there just to sort of spark our curiosity or anything like that, or if it was something that he had a plan for or what. But Tolkien revised his maps many times, and of course, it wasn't just him drawing them. His son was also drawing the maps. A lot of times, Tolkien's maps were sort of these rough sketches, and then Christopher would come in behind him and sort of straighten everything out. Most of the writing that you see on Tolkien's maps is actually Christopher's writing because his father had sort of notoriously bad handwriting. The theme from Mortal Kombat came from a Nordic church song. Do you mean one of the themes in the games, or are you talking about like from the movie? Because I know that the famous music theme that in the movie that was a song called it was actually called Techno Syndrome, you know. But oh, it was a finish. Oh, Chewie, you got me. That's a good pun. That's a good one. Okay, a finish him. Very good. Very good. I applaud you, Chewie. W pun, Chewie. That was amazing. I like it. Finish him. I like it. I had one. What was it? I had something like that. What was it? I don't remember now. If I remember it, I'll tell it to you. I know I've never seen that one before. That was really good. I finished him. I, I like that. I was taking it seriously. I didn't realize you were making a joke at first until you said finish him, and I was like, oh, finish him. So I don't have a plan for today like I had on Thursday. Thursday I went in to the stream with we have a plan. Hey Harry, we're going to read Leaf by Nigel, and we're going to talk about what is allegory and what is not allegory. And I think you guys mostly got it. And we had a lot of fun. It was a really, really fun stream for me. I don't have a plan for today. I do want to update you guys. I will take questions if you have questions. We'll do readings if you want to do readings. But the update is really just that I check the. Oh, you're from India. I love India. Great country. Yes, absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. Um, I have a few friends in India. It's a great country. I'm especially fond of the food because I like curry and I like spicy sort of foods and everything. So there you go. But anyway, I see we have the weirdos in. I'm not going to acknowledge them. I'm just going to let the moderators do their thing, and we're just going to pretend they're not even there, and we're going to have fun without them. So there we have. But anyway, well, Core had several super chats and never asked for a reading. And I asked Core several times if he wanted a reading, and he never, hi, Steve, he never answered me. So I think that we're going to, if Core wants a reading, he can certainly get one. I mean, like, he did a bunch of super chats. So, um, early in the Fellowship of the Ring, the group is leaving the Shire and they fall asleep in a fox. Okay, yeah. So I talked about this a little bit. I want to give you guys the update. Chewie, do you mind? I'm gonna circle back to that. I do want to talk about the fox actually, but I want to give you guys the update. So the update is that I checked the tracking on the package that I'm sending out to my friend in California who's building the new computer. Her name is Corin. She's building the new computer, and she had most of the parts, but I had to send her the graphics unit that I bought as well as the what do you call it? Yeah, PC of Power update, exactly. The old computer, the entirety of it, so she could take out the hard drives that are in there and the get all that stuff put into the new computer so that I could have access to all the old files and I don't lose anything. And for a little while, we were in sort of like UPS tracking limbo, which Alice knows a lot about tracking limbo, not necessarily UPS, but um, Alice has been going through. Um, we'll say the not Mordor perhaps, but maybe the Midgewater Marshes here with some FedEx tracking on their end. But anyway, yeah, it was in tracking limbo for a while, but I got confirmation that it was in San Pablo, I believe it's called, San Pablo, California. And I looked that up, and it's really close to Oakland, which is where it's going. That's where Corin lives. So we're going, so she should be having the package tomorrow. So once she does that, she finishes putting the computer together and sends it to me. We're going to be back in business. I'm going to change my whole setup at the desk because I don't want the computer to be on the floor. I want it to be on the desk, so I have to move a few things around. There's also some things I need to pick up, but really just just good news is that the PC is mostly built and the last few parts are on their way and they should be there tomorrow. So there you go. That's the big news. Let's talk about the Thinking Fox. I talked about this a little bit in a video that I did that was where I was going through one of those graphics, one of those memes that people make where it's like the iceberg. And if you don't know what an iceberg meme is, I'm assuming that most people do. And but for anybody out there who's maybe watching live or maybe watching this later, and if you don't know what an iceberg is, well, you should check out the playlist. But there's a graphic of an iceberg where at the very top level is surface level information that everybody knows. Um, and oh, really? Oh, really, Alice? I'll be interested to hear that actually. I mean, maybe not here, but you could DM me, of course. Um, well, you see, the thing is that what I do, Richard, I can't do from I can't do from like a basic PC. I need like a whole setup. So the whole streaming setup and everything is, yeah. But anyway, iceberg, you as you go further down, it's the more obscure stuff. And usually at the very bottom, there's a few things that are not even like real. They're just like crazy memes and things that are put in there to mess with people. But I went through it, and one of them just mentioned it, just said the Thinking Fox. And the Thinking Fox is really interesting. So as Chewie had explained, it was very early on in the Fellowship of the Ring. It's in book one, before the actual Fellowship of the Ring is formed. They had not been to Rivendell yet. As a matter of fact, they were still in the Shire, and it was just Frodo and Sam and Pippin, and they were traveling to Crick Hollow to go along with Frodo's cover story that he was just moving there because he had run low on inherited money, and that he sold Bagan to his cousins, the Sackville Bagginses, and then you he would go there and live there, and then he would be able to sort of quietly slip out of the Shire undetected there in Buckland because it's near to the borders of the Shire, and it's not as centralized, like right in the middle. Because if you look at the map of the Shire, Hobbiton, where Bag End is kind of like smack dab in the middle. It's ostensibly it's in the West Farthing, but it's really just very close to the where the other farthings meet. So it's like right in the middle there. You know. But anyway, what? Okay. Okay. So anyway, there's a point where Frodo and Sam and Pippin are sleeping kind of near the side of the road, and there's this weird narrative. I talked about it in the iceberg video, and I also talked about it when we read through the Fellowship of the Ring, of course. Um, and the issue here is that the weird narrative is that a fox comes up to, I think it was Frodo, and sniffs at them, sniffs at the hobbits, and then has a few thoughts, and then leaves. And that's the only time that the narrative really goes away from one of the centralized characters. Because usually we can tell sort of like who is telling the story at this point in time. And in the beginning, it's almost always Frodo, at least until the end of book two. And then Frodo and Sam go off on, towards Mordor. They meet Gollum, and you can, even when you're reading their parts of the story, you could tell whether it's Frodo telling the story or Sam telling the story. A lot of times it's Sam. And towards the end of the book, it's almost exclusively Sam. And then, of course, there are parts where it's Pippin telling the story, or there are parts where it's probably Gimli telling the story. The reason that I say probably Gimli is because we know that out of those three, that's Gimli and Legolas and Aragorn. We know that Gimli had a meeting with Frodo and Merry and Pippin and Sam and Gandalf to sort of exchange notes. Oh, okay. Well, see, the thing about the Shadow of War, Shadow of Mordor, and all that, that's just sub creation in its own way. It's a fan fiction, and does it fit with the established lore? No. Does that matter? Not really. It doesn't really matter, because we could see it as sort of a story that might be told by people in Gondor, and we can say that, well, maybe these events sort of kind of happened, but not in the way that they were exactly told. And sort of like, I mean, here, the first two volumes here, the Book of Lost Tales, parts one and two, is sort of a reflection of the Silmarillion, a very, very detailed and very, very in depth version of the same story that, really just, doesn't fit with the established lore. But a lot of the established lore doesn't fit with the established lore. So, to get bent out of shape about things like that seems to me to be sort of a waste of energy, you know? So there you go. And I mean, that's the thing. It's a video game. So yeah, you could totally enjoy it on that level where you're just playing the gameplay and you're not watching the story or anything like that. Personally, I want to watch the story and sort of like amuse myself that way. I know I haven't played these. I have them, but I haven't played them. I've been planning to stream them. Of course, I have to get my PC back, but and of course we'll pull apart all the lore and everything. But that doesn't mean that it's bad, because it's okay for people to tell stories in Middle Earth that didn't actually happen. Now, as to whether or not it's poorly written, I mean, like I said, I don't have an opinion on that. You know, I don't have an opinion on that. So, so I said that I'm not going to address the idiocy, the foolishness that's happening in shower. I'm just going to address that one. My hair is wet because I just got out of the shower. Just any sort of stupidity like that comes through. I just have to say, boy, you tried, didn't you? You tried. So yeah, those games, like I said, poorly written. I would have to like actually play them and say that. But see, here's the thing: anytime that something doesn't fit into the narrative or the established lore, people say it's poorly written. And it's sort of like this really nebulous claim. They say, well, this is bad writing because I personally don't like it, And there are people that say Tolkien was a bad writer, and everybody has their own opinion, you know what I mean? And I get it. Yeah, there's good fan fiction, there's bad fan fiction. I'm telling you that having not played it, I can't tell you which it is. You know what I mean? That's like one of those things. And hey, Triple Taco, thank you very much. Um, Let me get back to the Thinking Fox. So the narrative, we're meant to understand that like Frodo wrote a lot of this. Some of it's written by Bilbo. Some of it, a lot of it really, is written by Sam. Some of it was recounted to them by other characters, most notably Gimli and Pippin. And the reason that I say Pippin rather than Merry is because there's parts that follow Merry, so he's in there too, especially like when he's with Eowyn or when he's with Theoden. Um, but there's also parts that it's Merry and Pippin together, and those are almost exclusively sort of from Pippin's perspective. And there's a lot of the beginning of book three where it's Merry and Pippin, but I'm sorry, Merry is unconscious for the beginning of it. Um, yeah, I mean the Shelob thing, yeah, I've seen the pictures and everything, but I can see that being something that people in Gondor believe about, hey, King Thors, about Shelob. Because what do we really know about her, right? I mean, we don't even know, we don't even really have a real name for Shelob. Because you think, well, the name's Shelob, right? What does Shelob mean? It's made out of two things, she and lob. She, it just means woman, right? Lob is not an old English word, not a middle English word, but an older modern English word, an archaic slang term for a spider. So when you say Shelob, you're really just saying lady spider. So we don't really know anything about her. So I would believe that people, like for example in Gondor, would have some sort of thoughts about, especially if they had heard about the fact that she had dealings with Gollum and whatnot. You know, they would have some sort of crazy ideas like that. You know, that's my nephew. It's an rather old picture of my nephew Bobby. Nobody's ever asked that. That's interesting. Nobody's ever asked that. But that's my nephew. I have pictures of them all over the walls. I guess maybe they're not usually in frame, but yeah, that's my nephew. His name is Bobby. He's 14 now, so he doesn't look anything like that. But yeah. Anyway, the Fox. So we know about that, but here's the thing: like, who wrote that, right? Like, who sat there and decided that there was going to be a period where the characters are all sleeping. You know, Frodo's sleeping, Sam's sleeping, Pippin's sleeping, Mary's not with them. You know, and a fox comes up and sniffs them, and then we hear the fox's thoughts. Right? Don't worry about it, Richard. That's okay. We hear the fox's thoughts. Where he's like, "Wow, this is strange. Three hobbits sleeping on the side of the road in the middle of nowhere. That's some weird stuff that's happening. You know, weird, wild stuff." And then it sort of toddles off, and we never hear from this fox again. So, how did this wind up in the story? I can give you a few possibilities, and then maybe you guys could decide how that wound up in the story, right? So, the first possibility, we consider what happened to these characters not too long after that. You know, obviously they go and they have their whole uh, run in with Farmer Maggot, and then he takes care of them for an evening, and then they go across the ferry with Merry, and they go to Crickhollow, and they hang out at Frodo's house once again just for a few hours. They have a meal, they take baths, and then they leave and they go into the. Actually, I think they slept there, but they go into the Old Forest, and they meet Tom Bombadil. And Tom Bombadil is somebody that we know is on record as having spoken to animals. So it is possible that this fox ran across Bombadil at some point and told him, and that Bombadil at some point told Frodo. Now, the case against that is that we don't hear that. We don't hear about Bombadil saying to Frodo, "Oh, I heard from one of my fox friends that you're sleeping at the side of the road, hiding from the Nazgul and ring-a-ding-dillo, and all that, right?" Hello, salad. So that's like one of those things. That's a possibility. Obviously, there's got to be conversations that happened in this story that we're not privy to. You know what I mean? Just like, you could read the whole 1,200 pages of The Lord of the Rings. Nobody ever has to stop to go to the bathroom. Does that mean that they don't do that? Of course not. Of course they do that. It just means that it wasn't written as part of the story because it's not important. So do we know every single thing that Tom Bombadil may have told the hobbits? No. However, I do think that something like that may have been brought up. I don't know. That's one possibility that I would give to you guys, and you guys can decide what you think is the truth here. Another possibility is we know that the Lord of the Rings in universe, out of universe, we know it was written by Tolkien. In universe, it was written by
Frodo and Sam and Pippin, Merry a little bit, you know, Gimli, um, Gandalf as well, Elrond. Really, almost all of it written by Frodo and Sam, but with them getting the stories from these other characters. Um, hey, Sithis, I don't know how much I can stress this to you because you've mentioned it a few times. I will do regular videos when I have my computer. I'm stuck doing this because I don't have my computer. I have asked you several times because you kept asking me about the horrendous thing, and I asked you, did you submit it somewhere? Did you submit it via YouTube? Did you submit it via Quora? If so, it'll sit there until I get to research and write and everything. Okay, I'm gonna get back to you, Dylan. Let me finish. And your last name is CR. Well, it's not that uncommon, I guess. It's not that uncommon. Although I've never ran into another one, IRL with that last name. I mean, I told the story not too long ago when I had to call my bank and do all these crazy security questions, and they asked me the age of somebody named Francisco Sierra, and I was like, I don't know who that is. I've never met somebody with that name. I said my father's middle name was Francis, but he's dead. So even if it was him, how do you answer how old he is? Is it how old he was when he died? How old he would be now? It's just sort of crazy, right? Oh, no, I get it. I know you're just enthusiastic, but I'm just saying that I'll get to it when I get to it. I can't get to it now. But let's talk about the fox just a little. Okay, so that was one possibility. The second possibility, when we consider the authors, one of them one of them is Bilbo. And that little bit of it, we know out of universe, right? It's just this is Tolkien starting to write a new story that is in its genesis nothing more than a sequel to The Hobbit. And due to that, in book one, we get a bit of that sort of Hobbit narrative, right? And maybe we could treat the Thinking Fox scene as sort of like the trolls from The Hobbit, right? Now, did Bilbo really run into three trolls in chapter two? Yes, he did. Yes. Bilbo's an unreliable narrator, but we know that really happened. Did they get turned to stone? Yes. Did they get some great, crazy Gondolin weapons out of their home? Yes. All that happened because all of that reverberates throughout the Lord of the Rings. As a matter of fact, Merry and Pippin even come across the trolls who are, stone statues at that point, right? Um, Well, yeah, and that's important, Dylan. Although there's not as many meals described in the Lord of the Rings as people say there are. Usually, it's sort of like, and then they ate what they could and moved on. I don't know. That whole meme never really sat right with me. But you're right, though. There are mundane things that are there, but they serve a purpose. It doesn't serve a purpose to say, well, then they woke up and then Gimli went into the woods and he had a big bowel movement. That's not important. It's not necessary. It doesn't add anything, other than maybe it being funny in a sort of very vulgar, childish sort of way, right? So we could say that, yeah, he definitely ran into the trolls. Did they speak? Probably yes. Probably yes. Did they have the names Bert, Tom, and William? No, that's ridiculous. One of them even had a last name, William Huggins. That's ridiculous. These trolls, would have these sort of very English sounding, like really almost hobbitish names. I don't think so. I don't think so. So, Bilbo's an unreliable narrator, and so you get these sort of like instances where Bilbo just sort of makes things up because he thinks it makes a good story. And we see that in the Lord of the Rings, possibly with a passage that he may have messed with. Are the rock giants in the Hobbit movies in the books because you haven't heard? Okay, so not quite like that. No. Okay, so the Hobbit films were sort of mostly nonsense. There was some good parts in the first film, and that's about it. After that, it got really weird really fast. So anyway, the Tolkien envisioned there being two types of giants, which he called ents. Ent is just an old English word that means giant. So an ent is a giant. And he had stone ents and tree ents. Now, the issue with Peter Jackson's interpretation is that he interpreted the tree ents as literally being walking trees, and he interpreted the stone ents as being rocks in like a human shape. And we're going on an adventure. So they weren't really supposed to look like that. What Tolkien meant when he said tree ents, he says these are giants that live in the woods. They tend to the trees, and they have a lot to do with trees. They are not trees themselves. The stone giants live in the mountains. They are giants that live in the mountains. So really what we had in the book The Hobbit was there was a situation where they were going over the Misty Mountains, and there were some giants nearby that were playing catch. They were throwing boulders back and forth, and it was sort of a dangerous situation. They didn't attack Bilbo or Gandalf or Thorin or anybody, but it was dangerous just to have these boulders being flung around. And Thorin had made a comment about we should get to a safer place because I don't want a giant to use me for a football, you know. And in Dutch also means if you take a little part of a plant and make it a new plant. That's interesting. I did not know that. Dutch has it's uh, a similar ancestor with it, it evolved from the same thing that English did, which was Old Norse. So that's why English and Dutch have some similarities. But there you go. But anyway, yeah, there weren't literally like walking rocks, but there were what Tolkien referred to as stone giants, which literally just meant they were giants that lived in the mountains. They were the mountain giants. Now, somebody asked about the Wayne Riders and two other things. So almost all of the information on the Wayne Riders, actually all of the information on the Wayne Riders, is in the appendix. If you read the appendix, that's everything we have. So if you read the Return of the King and you read the appendix and all about the wars that Gondor had with the Wayne Riders, and especially the stuff to do with the Dead Marshes and how they used that as sort of a strategic point, that's all we know. But there were, let's see, there were a few other things you asked about. Francis Sierra is Sauron in disguise. I knew it. Let's see. The Varyags and the peoples of Khan. So Varyag is interesting because it was just sort of mentioned in the Return of the King. And I did a little bit of an answer on this not too super long ago, like maybe either late last year or early this year. And the word, if you look into the linguistic Varyag, it suggests that they are mercenaries. And they were probably actually the people from Khand. Now, Khand is the land that's just to the southeast of Mordor. And we really don't know anything about it. So we know that there were some people there that were hired by Sauron as mercenaries that fought in his wars. And these were probably some of the first people to surrender after the fall of Sauron, and they just went home. They weren't like the orcs where they were magically compelled into Sauron's into his service. They weren't like the Haradrim where they were sort of enslaved. They weren't like the Easterlings who just sort of saw Sauron as somebody who had a mutual enemy with them. Yeah, I appreciate that, Coyote, especially that I do like Star Trek a lot. God! But really, anything else about... We don't know anything about the culture of Khand or what they were like. We do know that the Druidon came out of that area because they were sort of persecuted in the Eastern lands. And because they were persecuted, they were sort of just this racial minority that that were driven out of their own lands, and that's why they came to live in the forests and in Gondor and Rohan. Since the Balrog was not brought back to Middle Earth like Gandalf was after their fight, what happened to him after his apparent death? So this is a good question, and I think the answer is that what happened to the Balrog of Durin's Bane, the Balrog, is probably the same thing that happened to Sauron and to Saruman. They probably just a ghost that exists and is wandering around Middle Earth and is not welcome in the West and just basically has to just eat its own feelings until the end of the world. So there you have it. Uh, do you mean the trolls? Because other than in the Book of Lost Tales, there's no ogres. Uh, there was an early point where Tolkien talked about ogres. And as a matter of fact, Melko, which was the original name of Melkor, he actually married an ogre and had a son named Kalimbo. And so Kalimbo was one of those sons of the Valar. Kalimbo wound up becoming Gothmog in the later revisions. Is there redemption for a Balrog? I will answer that in the way that Tolkien would have answered that. That's between that being and its maker. It is possible. It is possible for any being in the Legendarium that's not Morgoth to find redemption. Even Sauron could find redemption, even after everything he did. But he has to seek it, and he has to seek it in the proper way. He has to really feel remorse. Was Uncalagon falling atop the peaks of Thangorodrim the cause of the part of the sinking of the lens of Beleriand? No, I think the war in general did that. I'll tell you why. Because that's just one part of it, and Beleriand was really big. And as a matter of fact, usually, if we consider where Thangorodrim was likely to be, it probably wasn't even considered part of Beleriand. So, yeah, ogres are usually more intelligent. That's usually the difference there, right? And usually nastier too. But anyway, and Calagon falling. First of all, you have to understand that these weren't really mountains. The elves called them volcanoes, and the reason that the elves called the three peaks of Thangorodrim volcanoes is because they saw three big heaps with smoke coming out of them, and that's what they called it. They called them volcanoes. The reality is that they weren't naturally formed. They were really two parts. One was it's sort of like the slag and what was dug out to create Angband, and the second part was that they acted as industrial chimneys, what we would call smokestacks, for the furnaces of Angband. So, so they were a lot easier to break. It wasn't part of the land itself. No evil person in the Lord of the Rings was redeemed. How do you know that? We know that Saruman wasn't redeemed, but we know that his spirit is going to be in Middle Earth in perpetuity. We know that he was denied. He could not go to the West. We know the same thing for Sauron. But we don't know if anybody else was redeemed. And I will give you an example of somebody who, several somebodies, a whole group of people that fought against the forces of good and were redeemed, and that is the Dunlendings, who fought at the Battle of Helm's Deep. They were forgiven by the Rohirrim, and they were not taken into custody. They were only asked to lay down their weapons and to help bury the dead, and then they were able to go home. Wormtongue is an interesting one. Do you guys think Wormtongue was redeemed? I think that Wormtongue could have been redeemed, and I think that Frodo knew that Wormtongue could have been redeemed, which is why Frodo was so upset by the fact that he was killed, because Frodo just a moment earlier had told him, you don't have to go with Saruman. You could stay in the Shire. You've done nothing wrong. We will accept you. And then Saruman starts ranting about how Wormtongue was killing people and eating people. And he's saying, well, hey, first off, I only killed people because you made me do it. And secondly, I never ate anybody. That's a lie. And he flew into a rage and he kills Saruman. And then he starts to run away. And then some hobbits shot him with arrows and he died. And that was meant to be, and I think is very sad because I think he could have found redemption, but redemption within the circles of the world, at least. And he's going to wind up in front of Mandos, and and then he's going to wind up in front of Iluvatar, and then that's where Tolkien would tell you it's between you and your creator whether or not you're forgiven. You know, so I think I don't know. I think Wormtongue was definitely on his way to redemption. But I think that he got murdered. What was the name of the sword that Éomer wielded? Oh, off the top of my head, I actually don't know, Chewie. He did mention it. He said it to Aragorn and Gimli and Legolas, but I don't remember the actual name. Does a redemption require active rejection of evil while alive? That's a good question. I'd say it requires that, but it requires more than that. It requires an authority to grant you that redemption, and we saw that in the Silmarillion with Sauron, because after the War of Wrath, which Sauron did not take part in, Sauron made himself look fair. He adopted a fair guise, and he went to Eanwe, and he abjured his evil deeds. Feanor did not have a named sword as far as we know. His lembas bread is making me thirsty. See, I'm laughing. You guys are probably like, "What does that mean? What are you saying?" Alice has been watching Seinfeld, so it's a reference to these pretzels are making me thirsty. So okay, here's the thing about that, Chewie. Tolkien himself hated that thought that you have to find redemption within the circles of the world, and that once you die, it's too late. You're locked in. He hated that. And everything, me and Sid and Matt had a whole discussion about this on the Council of Tolkien, right? And we all came to the same conclusion. We're attacking the issue from different ends and everything, but we all came to an agreement that Tolkien believed in universal salvation, and that because he believed in universal salvation, that there would be universal salvation in the Legendarium. Thank you, Dylan, for the super chat. So, and Tolkien even said that even Gollum could be forgiven, So, yeah, he never really said whether or not there was a hell, for example, beyond the circles of the world. And because he never mentioned it, and he never had any of the characters talk about that, I mean, the closest that we get is the use of hell as a description for anything that's sort of like very hot, and that's how we get words like Udun and Utumno. Which is Udun is literally just hell. Utumno is iron hell. But those are words the elves come up with, and since the elves actually don't die, they wouldn't believe in hell. So when you stop to think about it, really, there was somebody that came by my channel once, and they said that they preferred Tolkien's version of the creation myth more than the biblical account, and they preferred his version of like the afterlife and everything over the biblical account, and that's, of course, that's that person's opinion. But I totally get it, because Tolkien saw issues with the way that the Abrahamic religions work, even though he was a very, very faithful man, and he believed in God and everything. But he didn't necessarily believe in everything that was written down, and he had issues like that, and he really didn't think that if you died, that was it, you're locked in and you can't find redemption anymore. So there you go. If I could choose one dark fortress to take up as my own, which would you set up shop within the entire Legendary? Oh man, you know what? I would say, hey, Galadriel and Celeborn, could you guys don't maybe just exercise Dol Guldur. That's free real estate. Let's make it a nice place, right? Right. So we'll do that. I have not heard about a robbery at the Louvre. So no. No, I'm from the United States. I'm from the United States. I have no ancestry from that area. As a matter of fact, my ancestry is it's interesting. It's a lot of Portuguese and some Italian in measure, and a lot of American. But yeah, no, I'm not. I don't have anybody in my family tree from that part of the world at all. Hold on, I gotta drink some water here. But yeah, I haven't heard anything about a robbery at the Louvre. I thought they had real. I gotta put you guys down to open this. I thought they had really good security there. You know, that's kind of wild. Wait, what are you asking, Gray? What are you asking, Gray? What? I don't know. Wait, hold on. Did Gray say something before that I missed? No, I don't think so. Because we were talking about the Legendarium, which is you were calling the Lord of the Rings verse. Tolkien referred to it as Legendarium. Other evil layers. Well, yeah, we were just talking about like Middle Earth. We weren't talking about like the whole of fiction. Otherwise, I don't know. Maybe we could live in Castle Grayskull or something. But yeah, Calvinism, I believe, is something that Tolkien was just no. He hated that. He hated that. Okay, you guys got to calm down. Okay, calm down in the chat. Not everybody that's coming in here is like being a troll, but some people are being kind of weird, and I'm going to ask you guys, don't be weird. Where would I take someone on a date in Middle Earth? Oh, I like that question because it's fun. Actually, Dylan, I'm going to reverse this. I'm going to reverse Uno card you. I'm going to answer the question. I promise I will, but I'm going to reverse Uno card you. Where would you take, because you're married, right? Where would you take your wife on a date in Middle Earth? That's a good question. I like it. I think you kind of have to tailor it to the person, right? Minas Morgul. Why Minas Morgul? I mean, maybe if you're dating somebody, you're taking, and they're like really goth. The Gardens of Lorien is a good one. Yeah, that's a good one. I would tailor it to who I'm dating, right? So it would depend on the woman, right? And if I think about the last one that I was in a serious relationship with, yeah, it's gonna be like what Coyote said. It's gonna be one of the pubs in the Shire, either the Green Dragon, or perhaps what's that one that's in? No, I can't think of the name of the other one. But yeah, probably the Green Dragon, right? But they probably have pubs in every town. Every little village has a pub, right? Some of the former French crown jewels were stuck. Wow. People love to steal crown jewels, and I never understood it because, like, are you ever going to be able to sell that? Probably not, right? See now, like if I was, yeah, if it was up to me, and let's say it was just a blind date, and I didn't know the person really well, I would say, yeah, the Grey Havens for sure, right? Seems like a romantic spot, right? Just watch the elves sail off, right? But yeah, no, Lorien's a good one though, because then Galadriel would probably hook you up with some minstrels playing you like some harps and stuff, right? Oh yeah, I guess that would be the way that they would turn them over. I tend to think that people who steal really really famous and really recognizable jewels like that, they tend to do it maybe for the notoriety more than anything. But yeah, that's wild. Yeah, hopefully they do find it. I don't know. That's kind of crazy. Yeah, Galadriel would she would have some like minstrels there, right? And the elves would be singing. Your date wouldn't know what they're saying, but it sounds nice, right? I really like the question, right? Wing elf, right? Wing elf, wing elf. I like that. Anybody else in chat? I really want to hear anybody else. Like, if you had to take somebody on a date somewhere in Middle Earth, where would it be? A picnic in the Wold? I mean, that's a wide open area. There you go. That is a wide open area. There's a whole lot of room for a picnic there. There's a whole lot of room for a picnic there. Wait, I got another one. What about the glittering caves of Angloran in Rohan? That would be a good one, right? Now, I don't think you could take them to the Undying Lands, right? First of all, because we're mortal. And secondly, once you go there, you don't generally come back. You're stuck there, right? The Valar really don't like people going back to Middle Earth, right? The Undying Lands. Like, wait a minute, you're taking me where? Like, oh, it's this great spot. It's in Tall Eressëa, but I guess we'll just move in, right? You'd have your wedding at Tanaquetil, chilling with your boy Manwe. There's no higher authority in the world to officiate a wedding than Manwe and Varda, right? Yeah. There's a weekend in the Iron Hills. There you go. There you go. No, but I think if I was to go to a dwarf place, it would definitely be Anglaron, the Glittering Caves in Rohan. That would be really cool, like the way that Gimli described it, and nobody's a bigger romantic in the Lord of the Rings than Gimli. Who's more of a romantic than Gimli? Nobody. So yeah, the way that he described it, that would probably be the spot, right? But yeah, the city in Mirkwood. Yeah, if you're talking about Thranduil's realm, they never actually gave it a name. It was always just, this is Thranduil's realm. They would call it the Woodland Realm, really. That's about it. You wonder about the logistics of the Grey Havens. Did we have to send word ahead so that a boat would be available? Do we wait for a certain number of elves already? Do we go? So Círdan makes the boats himself. He's been making boats since the First Age. He makes better boats than anybody else. Well, Beren wasn't a character in the Lord of the Rings. If we were taking the entirety of the Legendarium, then yeah, I would give it to Beren. Thranduil definitely had good wine. Absolutely. I mean, that one elf, Galleon, he drank just a few cups of it and he fell asleep. So it must have been pretty good, right? It must have been strong. But anyway, yeah, the Grey Havens. So yeah, Círdan makes the boats himself, and he was gifted the greatest foresight that any elf ever had, and that's a gift that he got directly from the Valar, because his heart's desire was to sail to the west himself, and through several happenstances, he never got to. And he realized that there was a reason for this, and that it was going to be his job to help people get to the west before he went there himself. So it was mentioned that he had this great foresight. So that's how he would know who gets to go and who doesn't, and that sort of thing. He would be able to just sense it. But yeah, I don't think I would want to take anybody into Mirkwood. I don't know, it doesn't seem very romantic. Maybe before it was Mirkwood, maybe when it was Greenwood, or maybe in the Fourth Age when it's cleaned up a bit, right? Like, cause I don't know. I don't think giant spiders are all that romantic, right? It was like, it's just lovely. Look at right over there, it's very dark, and right over there are about 1,000 eyes staring at us, and I think there's a corpse over there. It's not very romantic. Like I said, you would have to be extremely goth. You would have to be more goth. But I think the caves are the answer, right? The Anglar on the Glittering Caves. That's the answer. That's the spot, I think. That's the date spot. As I said, in the Lord of the Rings, not in the whole of the Legendarium, but in the Lord of the Rings, who's a bigger romantic than Gimli? The way that he described it, And even like when he was describing it, Legolas was just sort of like, wow, I've never heard you talk like this before. You're getting all passionate on me here. Who would you choose to have as your best man at a wedding, taking the whole Legendarium into account? Sam. That's Sam. Sam. Can you imagine his speech? It would be so good. Because he'd get up there and all shy and everything, and he'd be like, well, I don't have proper speech and all, And then he'd say like the most wonderful, heartfelt thing ever, right? He'd say the most heartfelt thing ever. So yeah, definitely Sam. I used to say that everybody deserves to have a friend like Sam, and then somebody, I think it might have been Alice, said, but also we should remember to be the Samwise for other people, and that's really important as well. You know. So yeah, maybe if you don't have a friend in your life that's like Sam, maybe you're the Sam, right? Yeah. Okay. So yes, absolutely, Richard. I'm agreeing with you on that. So if I was to take a big issue with the films, and I have a few issues with the films, some of them are big, some of them are small. Many of them are small. But the biggest one is the character assassination of certain characters, like basically taking characters and making them way worse. And there's a long list of characters that were made worse by the films. There's a very short list of characters that were made better by the films. Boromir is at the top of that list. George Costanza and Sam swapping places. You see, I don't see Sam wouldn't put up with Jerry Seinfeld for like more than a few. He'd punch the heck out of him. Like he'd be like, "I don't like the way you treat people," and he'd just start pummeling him. And then Kramer would come sliding in, and he'd say, come in here without knocking first. Where's your manners?" And then he'd beat the heck out of Kramer. And George, man, George, how long is he gonna last in Middle Earth, right? Hey, Laurel, how's it going? Who would I challenge to a cook-off in Middle Earth? Well, can I take the films into account? Because then I would just challenge Eowyn, easy win. No, actually, I'm lying about that. I wouldn't do that. It would actually be Sam again because Sam is like a really good cook, and you'd want somebody that you would give a challenge and you might learn something from them. But anyway, going back to what we were talking about, the films. So there's a long list of characters that were made really like worse by the films: Denethor, Faramir, Frodo. But the biggest one for me personally is Gimli. They made him, hey Time Lord guy, they made him a buffoon, and I'm not really a fan of that. Yes, he's got some funny lines and everything, and there's some amusing scenes. Gimli's funny in the books too, but in a different way. Um, yeah. So I would say, definitely I agree with you there, Richard. But yeah, I think that like some of the characters were almost unrecognizable. Faramir was unrecognizable. Denethor was pretty off. Frodo was pretty off. But then there's characters that they really got right, like Gandalf, perfect. Sam, perfect. They did a lot of good things. I think Merry and Pippin are on the cusp. You know. Yeah, well, I didn't like the Hobbit films either. I like the Rankin Bass cartoon, but yeah. I didn't like the Hobbit trilogy at all. I mean, like I said, there are parts of the first film that I like, but that's it. You know, yeah, I don't. Well, let me see. I don't have an intent. I'm going to be honest with you guys. I don't have an intense dislike for any of the adaptations. But The Hobbit is close, man. I really, really hated the desolation of Smaug. The first film is hey core. The first film is pretty good, and the last one is just kind of a mess. But the one in the middle, I had a lot of issues with it. And yeah, the music was excellent. Excellent soundtrack. I loved it when the dwarves sang in Bag End. They did a great job. But like I said, I don't really hate any of the adaptations except for maybe the Desolation of Smag. That's definitely the worst one. Core, I wanted to ask you something since you did so many super chats last time. Did you want me to do a reading? Because I never got to do a reading for you. Um, well, wait, Richard, what indication did we ever get that Sam was a glutton any more than any other hobbit? You know? Oh my God, the liquid gold thing was so dumb. At first, I thought, well, maybe what they're going for with that is that maybe they were going to, because he wasn't covered in coins and gems and stuff on his belly like he was supposed to be. And I thought, well, maybe this is sort of how they're going to get to that point, right? And they're going to, it's not a smart way to do it, but maybe that's what they're trying to do. That instead of saying, oh, he slept on his gold and his silver and his gems so long that a lot of it just got stuck to him and acts as his armor, and they're going to do his thing where the dwarves try to kill Smaug and they just wind up making him stronger. Oh, Isildur. Yeah, Isildur was done very dirty. Absolutely. But then they go through all of that just to dump a bunch of gold on him. And then what does he do? He just shakes it off like a wet dog and flies away. And I was like, well, that was a waste of time. Yeah. I mean, if you would like for me to any of Tolkien's books, and I will just read whatever part to you that you would like me to. Just if you say, oh, I mean, look here, we have everything here, you know, and over here as well. So I'm just saying, usually when people tip, I'll do like a brief reading, just a little bit of whatever book they want. If you don't want that, that's fine. But I'm offering, Oh God, Rich. See that I think honestly, as bad as that was, I think the gold thing with Smaug was worse. I think because at least there was some sort of emotional impact to the Toriel thing, even though I didn't like it. The Smaug thing was dumb. I thought it was terrible. The whole thing. But then again, I mean, when you're trying to adapt a tiny book into 3 long movies. Well, you remember, it was not implied that he was stealing food. He was specifically framed by Gollum that he was stealing food. And then, of course, he wasn't. He didn't actually do it. Gollum set him up by throwing away the lembas bread and putting a few crumbs on Sam's jacket. And the character that was really done dirty there was actually Frodo, because Frodo never would have believed that. And he never would have sided with Gollum over Sam. And he absolutely never would have told Sam to go home like that. So, yeah. The guy had Sauron kill his own father. He had a right to be disturbed enough to take the ring. Well, it's just that they made him look so sinister. That was the issue that I had with Isildur. They made it look like him taking the ring was this big moral failing, and it wasn't. It wasn't. Anybody would have done that. Oh, he didn't say anything wrong there. But Richard, I agree with you specifically about the fact that Sam was sort of the chubby one, when really in the group of hobbits, the chubby one would have been Frodo, and that Sam probably would have been the one that was in the best shape because he was somebody who worked outside with his hands, and probably didn't. And since he wasn't rich like Frodo and Merry and Pippin, he wouldn't eat 6 meals a day. But that was really just because the actor was a chubby guy, and I can't fault Sean Astin for anything. He did a wonderful job playing Sam. All right, hold on. Let me see. Core pick something. The Lay of Leithian. Okay. All right, I can do that. Absolutely. Let me grab it. I'm going to put the yeah. Well, I just talked about it, didn't I? I just talked about it. But like I said, they never said that Sam stole food. They just had a thing where Gollum accused him. He set him up, and like I said, the character that was out of whack there was Frodo for believing that. The whole Cirith thing wasn't handled well. I'm going to put the phone down briefly while I pick a part of the Lay of Leithian. Let's see. Okay. Here we go. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Tolkien was, I mean, Beowulf was his biggest influence. He had other influences, of course, but Beowulf was the biggest one. Here we are. Such deeds of daring there they wrought that soon the hunters that them sought, as rumor of their coming fled.
Though price was set upon each head to match the weregild of a king, no soldier could to Morgoth bring news even of their hidden lair. For where the highland brown and bare above the darkling pines arose of steep Dorthonion to the snows, and barren mountain winds there lay, a tarn of water blue by day, by night a mirror of dark glass, for stars of Elbereth that pass above the world into the west. Once hallowed, still that place was blessed, no shadow of Morgoth and no evil thing, yet thither came a whispering ring of slender birches silver grey, stooped on its margin round it lay, a lonely moor and the bare bones of ancient earth like standing stones, thrust through the heather and the whim, and there by houseless Eluin, the hunted lord and faithful men under the grey stones made their den. Gorlim unhappy, Angrim's son, as the tale tells of these was one most fierce and hopeless he to wife, while fair was the fortune of his life, took the white maiden Eilinel, dear love they had ere evil fell, to war he rode, from war return, to find his fields and homestead burned, his house forsaken roofless stood, empty amidst the leafless wood, and Eilinel, white Eilinel, was taken whither none could tell, to death or thraldom far away. Black was the shadow of that day. Forever on his heart and doubt still gnawed him as he went about, in wilderness wandering, or at night, oft sleepless, thinking that she might, ere evil come, have timely fled into the woods. She was not dead. Let me, She lived, she would return again to seek him, and would deem him slain. Therefore at whiles he left the lair, and secretly alone would peril dare, and come to his old house at night, broken and cold, without fire or light, and naught but grief renewed would gain, watching and waiting there in vain. In vain, or worse, for many spies had Morgoth many lurking eyes, well used to pierce the deepest dark, and Gorlim's coming they would mark, and would report there came a day when once more Gorlim crept that way, down the deserted weedy lane at dusk of autumn sad with rain, and cold wind whining, lo, a light, at window fluttering in the night. Amazed he saw, and drawing near, between faint hope and sudden fear, he looked within, 'twas Eilinel. Though changed she was, he knew her well, with grief and hunger she was worn, her tresses tangled, raiment torn, her gentle eyes with tears were dim, as soft she wept, Gorlim, Gorlim. Thou canst not have forsaken me, then slain, alas, thou slain must be, and I must linger cold alone, and loveless as a barren stone. There we have it. I think that's 76 lines of it there at least. There's quite a bit to the Lay of Leithian. Hey, Willpower, how's it going? All right. Let me put that away, and then I'm going to catch up on chat. Thank you, Dylan. Let me see if I missed anything here. Let's see. You personally think that Tolkien should be held in higher praise than he is? He wrote the playbook for modern fantasy. Agree. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I personally think that, if I was casting Sam, if we were doing a movie, I would want somebody who was pretty built and in shape, right? But yeah, they never really implied that he was a glutton any more than any of the hobbits were in the movie. That was just Gollum lying. But yeah, thank you. There it is, Core. Thank you so much for your super chats in the previous stream. Like I said, anybody who's done a super chat or a tip or anything like that, if you want a reading, I'll do it for you. I don't want to go for very much longer because, hey, Hamza, I mentioned that I'm in a fair bit of physical pain today, although putting that menthol stuff on my hip really helped it out. So it's a little bit better now, but we'll go for a little while longer. Dylan, yes, you do such a fine job as a moderator, and you know what?
I'm gonna have both of my moderators tell me what I'll read for them. I'll do one for you, Dylan, and I'll do one for Alice as well. Oh, okay, so Marin, that's interesting. I watched that video, and when people showed it to me, and I said, "Well, I don't really know Arthas." Oh, I threw my hip out trying to fix my computer, and I haven't really had the time to really do anything. You would ask my favorite section, War of the Jewels, whatever it may be. Oh, so you just want me to read something from the War of the Jewels? I can do that. Mm. Of course, existence is morally gray, but guess what? The genre is called fantasy. It's not meant to be realistic. But yeah, I don't know much about Warcraft. And so when I was like, well, who is this guy? And they said, well, he's a necromancer. And I was like, okay, well, that's a good sort of match for Sauron, right? Having watched it, I think that they overplayed a little bit of what Sauron actually does physically. However, not to say that he's not capable of doing all of those things, right? He's put fully everything that they showed him doing is something that he could do. However, it usually doesn't happen like that. It's not an instant thing. Like making a new body is something that takes him a while. We can say that maybe under like really great stress, he could do that, but we don't have examples of that. They did mention that he could just fight as a spirit, and of course that is true. So, like I said, I liked the animation in it. I thought the voice acting and the animation and everything, and it was very cool. But I got to say that having not known anything about the Lich King from World of Warcraft, I couldn't really tell you whether or not that was an accurate thing. Maybe Sauron could do that, maybe he couldn't. I don't really know. But I only read a little bit of see, here's the thing. Just the fact that they call themselves Game of Thrones fans means they probably don't read very much at all. Only the first book is called that, A Game of Thrones. The series is called A Song of Ice and Fire. I tried to read it. I thought the writing was rather juvenile. I thought it was all like, oh, look at all this cool stuff that I write about, and look how edgy I am. It just felt like a teenager was writing it. So I read about half of a Game of Thrones, and I didn't like it. I also felt that it was just too obviously based off of the Wars of the Roses. So there you have it there. But anyway, okay, so you chose the War of the Jewels, and Alice, I'll do one for you as well. Let me put you down while I grab the War of the Jewels. That's a very big tome here. Oh boy, oh boy. All right. Okay. I'll pick something from the War of the Jewels for you guys. Let me just So here we have The War of the Jewels, the later Silmarillion Part 2, The Legends of Beleriand. Let's read the Fingolfin part. It's page 280 somewhat there. Am I wrong? Somehow I wound up in the Wanderings of Hurin. It's not exactly correct now, is it? Give me a moment. These pages are very, very thin. Oh, it's 238. I swear I'm not dyslexic. Let's see. Where will we start?
I think we'll do this part, the last chapters of the Quenta Silmarillion. Well, if you want dark fantasy that Tolkien wrote, just read The Children of Húrin. I've always said that George R. R. Martin wished he was talented enough to write that story, right? Let's see. The Narnia books. I really liked the first one. The second one was okay, and I hated the third one, and then I didn't read any further than that. So there you have it there. Yes, C.S. Lewis's science fiction is very good. I would highly recommend that as well. Of the next chapters in Quenta Silmarillion, the Tale of Beren and Luthien, there is almost nothing to add to my account. A typescript of the LQ1 series was made, but my father only glanced through it cursorily, correcting a few errors in the typing and missing a major one. From this it was copied in the LQ2 series, which again, he looked at it in a cursory and uncomparative fashion, such as old names as Inglor and Finrod were not changed to Finrod and Finarfin. The only change that he made to the LQ2 text was at the very beginning, where against Noldor he wrote in the margin Numenor, where is the longest save one of the songs of the Noldor Numenor concerning the world of old. Okay. Actually, I think I should back up a little here. I think this is the part I'm going to do. Here we are. This is what I want to do. Right here. But fearing now that all strong places were doomed to fall at last before the might of Morgoth, he sent away his wife Merrill to her own folk in Eglarest, and with her went their son, yet an elven child, and Gil-galad Starlight he was called for the brightness of his eye. Felagund's wife Merrill had not been named before, nor any child of his, and this is the first appearance of Gil-galad from the Lord of the Rings. Another note on the subject is found in the QS manuscript near the opening of the short, or condensed, version of the tale of Beren and Luthien, penciled rapidly at the foot of the page, but clearly referring to the statement in the text that Felagund gave the crown of Nargothrond to Orodreth before his departure with Beren. But foreseeing evil, he commanded Orodreth to send away his son Gil-galad and his wife. This was struck out, and somewhat further on in the tale of Beren and Luthien in that same version, in a third hasty note, without direction for insertion, but evidently referring to the passage in which Orodreth expelled Celegorm and Curufin from Nargothrond. But the lady, wife of Inglor, forsook the folk of Nargothrond, and went with her son Gil-galad to the havens of the Falas. A blank space is left here for the name of Felagund's wife. In each of these mentions, taking them in sequence, her departure is displaced to a later point, but of course they need not have been written in that sequence, although the third presumably replaced the second struck out. On the other hand, it seems very unlikely that the three editions do not belong together, though there seems to be no way of discovering with certainty when they were written. There's just one more part that I will back up a bit here. Here we are. Sauron was the chief servant of the evil Vala, whom he had suborned to his service in Valinor from among the people of the gods. He was become a wizard of dreadful power, master of necromancy, foul in wisdom. And then the revision of that. Now Sauron, whom the Noldor called Gorthu, was the chief servant of Morgoth. In Valinor he had dwelt among the people of the gods, but there Morgoth had drawn him to evil and to his service. He was become now a sorcerer of dreadful power, master of shadows and of ghosts, foul in wisdom. Okay. All right, let me put that aside there. Okay. Alice, did you want anything? Since you've been doing all this moderation for me tonight, we'll end it. If you have a specific thing you'd like me to read, let me know. Ooh. Ow. Ouch. So I'm hoping, I don't know when the computer is going to come, but the next Tolkien stream for you guys will be Thursday night.
whether it's on my phone or on the computer, it's going to be Thursday night. Well, actually, hold on. Let me look at the date here. Well, that's the plan anyway. I'll let you guys know if otherwise. I do have to plug in my phone here because I'm at like 19% here. I'm not sure that Alice is there right now. We'd always get it next time. There we go. Trying to plug the... I should have plugged in before we even started. I didn't realize it was at 19% there. Glad I looked. Oof. Yeah, well, I mean, it's a really good build. It just hasn't arrived here. Okay. Oh, you'll save it for next time. Okay, thank you. Because I'm hurting right now. What it really is, I got to lay down for a bit and stretch myself out. And somebody mentioned yoga earlier, and I don't actually know anything about yoga. How do you turn water holy? You boil the hell out of it. Thank you. I'm here all week. That's a good one. I like it. I'm rather fond of what people would refer to as dad jokes, Oh, ouch. Okay. But yeah, I should be doing some like stretching exercises and stuff to help me out here. So, I'll let you guys know otherwise, but the plan is we'll be doing Twitch streams, pretty much every day, but used to get a lot of back pain, but it's basically because you're sitting around too much. That'll do it. Yeah. It's a tomato. Yeah. But anyway, we will go ahead and end today. I will see you guys again on Thursday unless anything happens where I, won't. But there you go. Yeah, you need that lumbar support. That's important. It's important to have that lumbar support. Anyway, and thank you to the moderators for smacking down all the weirdos that come in here, which I don't understand the point of it. But then again, I'm not 13 years old like they are. So we'll see you guys next time.